There are 3 major problems with Spider-Man 2, but before you Spider-Man fans attack me in the comments, I just want to let you know that Spider-Man 2 was one of my favorite games from last year, probably even in my top 5. There is no denying that Spider-Man 2 is a must-play game. I mean, you don't get a Game of the Year nomination without the game actually being good. It didn't win any awards, but still it got nominations which many games cannot say. But for me, and it seems like many others, Spider-Man 2 made some mistakes that stop it from being a complete and comprehensive masterpiece. I think the right word to describe my feelings towards the negatives in Spider-Man 2 is conflicted. I believe we can boil down all of the problems in Spider-Man 2 into 3 main categories. So let's start with the first problem I had with Spider-Man 2, and it is that the side missions were a bit lackluster. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Harvard mission and the Miles with the mechanical dog were top tier, but the rest of the side content was a bit lackluster. 2 of the main side missions were simply setting up the villains for the next Spider-Man game. There were 8 or 9 Kraven drone missions in which we had to follow the drone continuously for quite some time, and all of this was just to tease that Chameleon is coming in the next game. I mean, it's cool that Chameleon has been set up, but side missions should be complete stories, not just setups for the next installment. This happened again with the Flame missions, but I'll admit it made sense this time, but still the same thing happens. We fight alongside Wraith, and then it turns out the main villain we are leading towards is actually Cletus Cassidy, who we all know in the comics is Carnage, but as you know in the story we don't get to fight him at all. I was upset about this being repeated because in Spider-Man PS4 side missions they didn't have side mission villains. Instead we got to fight Taskmaster, we got to fight Tombstone, we even had to take down a fake Spider-Man. It kind of feels like the MCU movies just setting up stuff for the next installment. In the end, my main point is that Spider-Man PS4 side missions were much more fleshed out compared to Spider-Man 2, which was a disappointment. Moving on to the second main problem I had with Spider-Man 2, which I know is going to be a controversial part of this video, and that is the character of Venom. Now, one thing straight off the bat, I genuinely appreciated Insomniac Games for taking a huge risk by not making Eddie Brock the main host for Venom, but instead going with a fresh new take on Harry Osborn. While I enjoyed the selection of Harry, it's the execution where I think the character falls flat. I'm more so talking about the symbiote itself, Venom. For as long as we have seen Venom, aside from the lethal protector side, Venom's main goal has always been his hatred for Spider-Man. His anger towards Spider-Man, that undeniable rage being rejected from Peter Parker, is what personally drives Venom.
I can't stand Spider-Man! I can't stand him! I hate him!
However, this time around Venom doesn't have that hatred in him. Instead, he wants Spider-Man, and the reason he wants Spider-Man? To take over the world. Yep, that's simply the reason he wants him, which this trope has been so overused in the comic book genre that most of the time it falls flat. Also, the one thing that should have been carried over for Harry Osborn from Eddie Brock was the hatred part. Venom should have hated Spider-Man with his entire being, and Harry should have hated Peter Parker before he got the symbiote back. That shared connection of hatred between Harry and Venom towards Spider-Man is what would have made Venom an absolute masterpiece of a character. I feel like the game was slow and fast at the same time. We got flashbacks for Harry with Peter, but I feel like we should have had a detailed and thorough explanation of Harry Osborn starting to hate Peter Parker for keeping the symbiote away from him and not rush it over. These 2 main problems with Spider-Man 2 boil down to one major problem, and that is the game is rushed. More specifically, I believe the symbiote arc of Peter and the Venom conclusion is rushed. I would have loved to see how much the symbiote was affecting Peter Parker, more specifically Spider-Man wise. Imagine if we had specific black suit missions across the map that we had to complete before we could progress the story. During those missions we could have spent time learning how badly this symbiote is affecting him, and in terms of Venom, his character arc is especially rushed. I believe we got to spend more time with Kraven than we did with Venom. Like, one of the main selling points of this game was Venom, but I feel like he didn't get enough attention. I feel like after Harry gets Venom, we should have gradually built a rivalry between Spider-Man and Venom and not immediately rush into the finale. I mean, don't get me wrong, there were missions, but those were more related to Venom infecting the whole of New York, which in itself was a very weird trope for Spider-Man game. Harry and Venom should be bonded because of their hatred for Spider-Man. While Venom does hate Peter for rejecting him, his motivations completely change after bonding with Harry, as he says,
"We're going to heal everyone."
To put it perfectly, Venom and Spider-Man's rivalry should have been explored further and been personal rather than a necessity to save the world. But guys, remember, Spider-Man 2 is legit one of the best games I played last year, and it's a legit Game of the Year contender. But I feel this game could have reached the masterpiece title if it had just worked a bit better on its side content, pacing issues, and made the main villain for a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man just a bit more personal. But I can be wrong, perhaps you guys feel something different. Let me know what you think about these points, and make sure to have a good day.